children especially shouldn't have to struggle and fight so hard for attention from society, from adults. A real education, a deep, thorough education of the world, of the universe, of what it means to be. We don't give it to them. And then kids are left up to their own devices. Speaking for myself, I grew up in a neighborhood I grew up in Hunters Point. Witnessed the crack epidemic in the 80s and 90s, and knowing how fucked up it is, seeing what it does, seeing people leave on Friday clean and just off work and fresh and ready to enjoy the weekend, lose their job, barely walking home Monday morning with no shoes and socks. Thinking it was the next day. And I saw that, but still something in the back of my little brain, my little inquisitive, curious brain wanted to know what's so good about that. What is it worth? Why is it worth all that? What's so good about it that makes it worth all that? That's some cold shit. I was about 23. I must have been 23 when I started taking methadone. I became a heroin addict. Started out with painkillers. And I got on methadone to try and get into a program to maybe try and get some help, try and find myself a little bit. And I still wasn't ready. But so I got on methadone and I was on it for 10 years. Then one day I looked in the mirror and I said, hell no, I'm tired of this shit. About 33 years old, I decided I'm gonna get off. And I got off a relatively high dose in 3 months, which was not recommended, but the God of my understanding told me that's what I needed to do. So I did that as a gift to my birthday. I think it was my 34th birthday. I believe it might have been my 34th birthday. And I did that as a gift to myself. I took my last dose on May 1st. And that was and May 2nd was the start of my new life. My next journey, my next chapter, the next phase in the journey. Then 5 years after that, let me get into a quick little story. 5 years after that, all these years, there's been this patch of poppies, opium poppies, that grow right around the corner from my house in somebody's front yard. And all these years, I would go out there and I would steal them, cut the top off, cut the little heads off, or slice them and get opium from them. Most of the time, I was plotting on them. When was I going to be able to do it? When would they be ready? When will they be ripe? What time of year? So it was more of plotting on them than actually harvesting them. I harvested them a few times, a whole bunch of times, but it was the plotting that took up a lot more of my mental. which was senseless. Anyway, so I had been basically abusing these plants. These plants are put here. If it wasn't for opium, we wouldn't have morphine, we wouldn't have painkillers. These plants evolved. The earth provided these plants for us for medicinal reasons. And so I used to harvest these plants. All of a sudden, okay, fast forward back to where, so this is in the 10 years. I just got thrown off track. I don't like stopping in front of these people's houses. I don't know, but I'm not really tripping. 5 years after that, I just began to get clean again, because I've been in and out of recovery basically my whole life. I just began to get clean again, and it was, my clean date at that time was February 18th, 2018. And on May 1st, May 2nd of that year, on my birthday of 2018, I happened to be walking Buddy up to the park like I always did, and he walking past these poppies, and for some reason this year they were big. The whole front yard was just flowing with them, like they were literally coming through the spaces in the fence. They were coming through the gaps in the fence, hanging out in the street. These poppies were literally hanging out in the street, on the sidewalk. And on my birthday, the first poppy of the year, I'd been waiting for him, because I was just, learning to appreciate it. That first one that opened was such a beautiful flower. It was huge. It was about 4.5, 5 feet tall. And when I saw it, I thought that might be a blessing from the universe and a blessing from the spirits and my ancestors, and that I believe that my understanding is that was my sister's spirit. My sister Corina, passed away of a drug overdose, and so I believe this was a gift from the universe and my spirits, my ancestors, a gift from the universe telling me that I'm in the right place at the right time. And from that point on, I didn't see that plant, I didn't see these flowers as something that I could abuse. I didn't see these flowers as something that I could take advantage of, or something that I could use for my own personal want or need or craving or whatever. I didn't feel that kind of, I'll say, predatory perspective of these plants. I knew that it was a gift. It's a gift from the heavens. It's a gift from God. It's a gift from the universe. The gift from Mother Gaia. And it was just a beautiful sight. And the way poppies grow is they lean on each other in the wind, so they grow in a patch. One flower leans on the other flowers in the wind, and in the and they lean on each other for support in the elements, and try and grow as tall as they can to reach the sun, to get as much sunlight as they can from the sun. So it was like a strong family. It was like a strong family, except for the ones that were hanging out in the street, hanging out on the sidewalk, that were falling through the fence. Those ones the leaves were starting to wilt, and they were leaning over to the side, and they were brown, and the foliage was beginning to die. It's before the flowers even opened. The foliage down at the bottom was beginning to die, and it was just represented to me like, when someone's together with their tribe or support, or their pack, their family, they're gonna thrive. And as soon as people start to stray from that community support, that we start to die off spiritually. Our spirit maybe starts to die off with isolation and loneliness, and looking for things outside of ourself and our support community of support for just looking outside of ourselves, period. Then we start to wilt up. We start to lean over to the side and end up in the street. You get shot. You have a stroke. You get stabbed, or you get into an accident, and then now you got a limp. Now you know what I mean? Dope stroke and shit. So that's what those poppies that were leaning out reminded me of. Every day I would walk by, and more flowers would be opening up. They were beautiful, beautiful flowers, and every day was just like another gift. About 3 weeks to a month into me taking pictures and like keeping an eye on these poppies, just like as far as witnessing it, witnessing nature develop in front of me with these new lenses, these new goggles. I felt like I was wearing different goggles. Even the colors and everything were brighter. And so about a month into it, about 3 weeks to a month into it, I start to notice these little weeds down at the bottom, where the curb across the sidewalk from the house, the front yard, across that sidewalk, there's the sidewalk curb ends, and then there's a drain, there's a gutter drain. So right in that corner between the curb and the gutter, there was little weeds. And it's always like that in the city. You always see, or anywhere you see weeds popping out of the concrete, in the cracks of the concrete. And but I noticed that this was a poppy. I noticed that these were poppies. And I was like, damn, I don't think they're gonna make it, because it was a hot year, there was no water. A few days go by, more days go by. I'm looking at them, watching these little poppies, and they're still there, they're growing, and all of a sudden I see a little flower bud on one. And I was like, oh shit, like, wow, I hope you make it. A couple days go by, it was hella hot, started to dehydrate, the flower started to die off, the little weed plant started to die off, the poppy plant started to die off. And when I walked past it, I remember thinking, man, you ain't gonna make it. And that's how, when you're in the street, especially when you're on drugs, that's how people look at you. Like, man, I don't think you're gonna make it. And so I recognized that about the poppy. That day, I walked up to get the dog. I'm feeding the dog water at the water fountain. I'm drinking water. I'm like, wow, this water is beautiful. This water is giving me life right now. I love my dog. I'm giving my dog some water. And I remember that poppy down the street was thirsty. That poppy needed some love. And when I was sitting in the alley, and this happened on a hell of occasions, sitting in the alley on the curb or on 7th and Market, at the flea market, trying to figure out a way to scam something to try and get some money for that next one. Trying to figure out that next one, trying to find something outside of myself to make myself feel whole. I remember just like that sense of desperation and wilting and needing life. So I figured, I love my dog. I'm feeding him water. What I wanted on that, when I was outside, all I really wanted was a certain kind of love that I didn't learn how to express with myself yet. All I wanted was somebody to love me. Comes down to it, that's all I wanted, was somebody to love me. I just didn't know who was supposed to do that for me. And so I filled my mouth up with water, drinking water at the water fountain with the dog. I fill my mouth up with water, and then I carry the water about 3.5 blocks down to where this poppy was in the gutter, and I fed the water to the poppy. And it was slouched over. It was not standing up. It was dying. And I figured, what's the best thing that could happen is this poppy could survive, or at least maybe get another couple days. What's the worst thing that could happen? I walked down the street with a mouthful of water. There's nothing. It's a no lose situation. So that very next day, when I went to walk the dog, when I went to walk Buddy, and I walked past a little weed, was standing up tall. His leaves, his foliage was wilted around the edge. It was brown a little bit around the edge, but he was standing up tall, and his arms were strong, but he was skinny, and he looked fragile. But his energy was just enormous. His energy was thriving, a survivor, thriving in the concrete. That's what the energy of this little poppy was. So I was like, damn, just a simple act of kindness could change the outcome of life. Just a simple act of kindness. I didn't do that for any reward. I just did that because I know, because that's what I wanted for myself. This poppy obviously couldn't find any water and water himself. Like, I was able to hit a point of desperation where I told myself, either I'm gonna continue this way and die, or I'm gonna stop, give myself a hug, and try and find some help. And that's what I ended up doing. A couple days go by, it starts to dehydrate again, and I was like, damn, struggling. This time I get up to the hill to walk the dog, and this fool Buddy, literally, I swear to God on everything I love, brings me an empty water bottle. He plays keep away with everything, with all other dogs, balls, toys, whatever he's doing, he's playing keep away with sticks, everything. And he brought me an empty water bottle that morning. He dropped it down at my feet. He walked up from the bushes with an empty water bottle and dropped it at my feet. So I filled the water bottle up with water, carried it back down to the poppy, and fed the poppy a whole bottle of water. And this was on a Friday. That Monday came back around, and when I hit that corner to take the dog for a walk, I could see the poppy from a block and a half away. A little teeny flower about the size of a silver dollar, 50-cent coin. Cool little, but it was like the sun was, it wasn't even in the sun yet, but it felt like I was staring into the sun when I looked at this poppy, but in a good way. Not like my eyes were hurting, but just like so much intense energy radiating out of this little poppy. And this is the GutterPoppy. This is who the GutterPoppy is. And the GutterPoppy is the revolution. The GutterPoppy is that little boy that grew up in Hunters Point, that grew up in this poppy. Didn't have its roots in the dirt. See, that's the other thing. Poppies grow, and they grow a taproot, and as deep as their roots can go, as tall as they're gonna get. This poppy didn't have deep roots. This poppy was literally rooted in the concrete. He was rooted in the concrete, rooted in decaying leaves that had gathered around the gutter from the wind. That's what it was rooted in, decay. So we're in a decaying society. I felt like I was rooted in a decaying community due to the crack epidemic, and we're in a decaying society. And what it took for the flower to survive was simple general principles. Simple as that. Universal guiding principles: empathy, love, compassion, attention, understanding, wisdom, knowledge, community, unity, solidarity. These are guiding principles. When you're able to develop a perception of reality viewed through the lenses of these guiding principles, problems become evident and solutions manifest. And this is on an individual level. If we developed a perception of reality viewed through the lens of spiritual principles and came together for a common cause, collectively, solutions would manifest. Peace and power to the people. I say peace and power to the people because until the people have all power, we won't know peace. There won't be peace until we have the power. We don't need to be exploited for a generation, for a population of people that has more money that can never be spent. Impossible to spend that money. One person, one family can never spend that much money. Doesn't make sense. 1% There's nothing in the world that costs $8 million an hour. Peace, love, all power to the people, and until the people have power, there will be no peace.